Hi, you're listening to the Stefan Livera podcast, a show about Bitcoin and Austrian economics. Today, for episode 148, my guest is Petek, also known on Twitter as @RadarRain. But first, a word for the sponsors of the show. So firstly, this podcast is brought to you by Kraken, one of the world's leading Bitcoin exchanges, known for offering a high-quality platform with high trading volume and low fees, with no minimum or hidden fees. Kraken also offer 24/7 support, and it's really fast to sign up with them. Kraken also offer Kraken Security Labs, strengthening the security of Kraken and also assessing the security of other peers in the Bitcoin space. If you're interested in using a mobile app, Kraken Pro mobile app is the one for you. Kraken Pro delivers all the security and features you love about the Kraken exchange in a beautiful mobile-first design for advanced Bitcoin trading on the go. Kraken also offer an OTC desk for those seeking more private and personalized service for large block trades over 100,000 USD or more. And Kraken also offer margin and futures. And don't forget to check out the Crypto Watch platform, cryptowat.ch, a popular charting and trading terminal for Bitcoin markets. Go and sign up at kraken.com or find Kraken Pro on a mobile app store. This podcast is also brought to you by Unchained Capital, a Bitcoin native financial services company, empowering customers with multi-signature as a foundation for their financial freedom and control. Unchained Capital have a special approach in allowing collaborative custody, giving users control over their private keys, as well as giving you the benefit of a financial partner and financial services. So Unchained Capital offer a 2 of 3 multi-signature vault. So in that scenario, you can hold 2 of the keys with a ledger or a Trezor, and Unchained can hold the third key in that scenario, and they can co-sign for you, or they can be like a backup if you were to ever lose one of your 2 keys. Also, Unchained offer collateralized loans, so you can put up Bitcoin and then receive USD without actually selling that Bitcoin. So it's stored on chain and it's never rehypothecated. I'm really impressed with Unchained Capital. They're offering fantastic services. Check out some of my earlier interviews with Drew Barnsell, Parker Lewis, and also Will Cole. I think you'll really enjoy partnering with them. Go and learn more at unchained-capital.com. Check out the Cipher Wheel by CipherSafe, ciphersafe.io. They're producing the Cipher Wheel product. So if you've invested in a Bitcoin hardware wallet, or you've got another 24-word BIP39 seed, you need to back that up and keep it in a way that's fireproof, waterproof, rustproof, petproof, and tamper-evident. So look into Cipher Wheel. It's a new product, it's compact, it comes in a wheel shape, it masks the words of your seed unless you open the padlock tamper-evident seal so you can know if it's been opened. So make sure that you or your loved ones have access to your Bitcoins if an accident occurs. The orders are going out now, so go and order yours at ciphersafe.io. So for the episode today, Petek joins me and we talk about coming into Bitcoin as an artist and creating Bitcoin art. And we also talk about her experience working with PlanB on stock-to-flow inspired art pieces, and her thoughts on women in Bitcoin and how some ideas were just ripe for being created. I hope you enjoy the episode. Petek, welcome to the show.
Hi, Stefan. Hi. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, so look, I've been following you online and I've seen you've been interacting with PlanB and you've been sharing some of what you're doing in terms of Bitcoin and art. Now, I know your background is not the typical libertarian or programmer or tech person. How did you get into all this?
No, it's definitely not. It's a long journey, but I was mainly a lot in the media industry, producing photo shoots and stuff like that. Always like commissioning creatives, art directing, branding and things like that, and like producing stuff worldwide. And I absolutely loved that. And then I came to South Africa, and I sort of did a 180 on that, and came here and started doing like art consulting for hotels and stuff like that. And so I've always appreciated creative people, and it's in me as well, obviously. And then I just had the opportunity to like paint some stuff for the hotels as well, because they asked me to. And it just all started from there, just kicked off literally. I was doing lots of research into Bitcoin. I mean, I started doing that about 3 years ago. 3 years ago? Yeah, like 2016. Before, I didn't buy anything then. I wanted to know what I was thinking of buying, but it just fascinated me so much. So I just really, literally dove straight into that rabbit hole.
But what was it that fascinated you?
I would say the cultural implications. I just had this innate feeling that, like an inner knowing, this is going to change the world. This is going to change the world, and it's not just going to change the monetary system. It's going to have like all these wider implications that are going to touch culture and humanity in lots of different ways, because Bitcoin forces you to reevaluate those things and educate yourself. I mean, it just forces you, but you just suddenly become, the more you read, the more aware you become of what's wrong with the system right now and where it can go with Bitcoin. I mean, it's fascinating, really.
Right. Okay. And so what's your journey been like in terms of learning about Bitcoin and learning about those cultural impacts, as you say?
The journey. I mean, the first question, I think, is definitely, the very first question is, what is Bitcoin? But then it's, what is money? How does money work? Oh, hang on a minute. It's just a promise, right? It's just a promise that used to be backed by gold, and now it kind of feels like an empty one, right? When you hold that piece of paper in your hand, you're like, I'm just trusting the bank that this is, worth something. And we've all collectively agreed that it's worth something when we conduct trade with each other. So we've all just agreed that's the medium of exchange. But what if there's a better one that doesn't lose its value over time, like pretty much every fiat system, form of fiat money has, historically speaking.
Yeah. So look, coming in 2016, who were some of the voices you were listening to? Who were some of the authors you were reading? What was around at that point, and how did that influence your understanding now?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I had a friend back then who just wouldn't stop talking about it, and he would literally bug me and say, "You've got to buy this." And so we would always like meet up and talk about it, and that's when I started doing research. I'm just thinking, so I wasn't on Twitter back then. I wasn't. I only joined this year. I'm just trying to think I just read about. I must admit, I did get stuck in some shit coins, man. So that was not good, and burnt my fingers there. But I think that's probably, for a lot of new or no coiners or noobs, as we like to say, I think that's probably, if you're doing your own research, that might be a natural course, especially back then when there was no warning and then this whole ICO stuff hadn't happened. And back then it was like, I remember sitting in a cafe and talking, like, that was like 2017, right? Like, I was in a cafe trying to get onto an exchange, right? And researching what's a good one. And then I realized, I just looked up, I turned left, looked right, and I saw everyone had some kind of Bitcoin exchange on their screen. In one cafe in Cape Town. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Is this like Bitcoin Central here or what? And then the guy next to me gave me a lot of information, and he actually, he gave me some good tips. But yeah, other than that, what was I reading? It was just a lot of internet research that I did, so my own research. And then I started to gravitate. Then I started to see like PlanB's work and his stock to flow chart. And all I can say is, when I saw that, or every time I saw that, I had this again, an inner pull. It's like, basically, I do a lot of energy work, and I learn how to perceive energy around me. It could be situational, but it can also be the energy in a person or an object or anything you come across. Just use your awareness and perceive the energy around it. And I kept noticing I would have this gravitational pull towards his stock to flow chart. And then I read it, and I wrapped my head around it, and I understood the principles of it. Not necessarily the math completely, like not the way he sort of, but I instinctively, I was like, it just clicked. I was like, that makes total sense. That makes total sense that the ratio or the relationship between the stock and the production of something measured in a value could determine if something it can be a unit of monetary exchange, right?
Right. And it may be that there's something underlying that we perceive these things that have, right, a high stock to flow or a low inflation rate, however you want to call it.
Yes.
But we want to accumulate those things because we think, those are the more scarce things.
Yeah. So I had that pull towards that. And inside there was something, I want to paint that. I want to paint that. This is going to be... I mean, I know I'm like, saying, but I was really this excited. I was like, I really want to paint that. This is going to be a piece of financial history when we look back at it. This is important. So I want to commemorate it, and I want to celebrate that, And so I approached him and I said, I would love to paint this for you. And it was his idea to kind of go, well, let's share this whole process with everybody and bring this to the people, because it's art and it's not all that geeky blockchain coding, complicated stuff, all the tech and all that stuff. This is another way to bring people to Bitcoin, or at least get them curious about it. Like people who don't understand or who might be intimidated by all that stuff. I mean, I'm a bit intimidated by it, and I've been reading about it for 3 years. Yeah.
Right. So you went to meet PlanB and you spoke about it. I'm sure you threw some ideas around in terms of how you can present it. Tell us a little bit about how some of those ideas formed of how you are planning to present stock to flow in an artwork.
I already knew, well, in the beginning, I already, because I paint paintings. So my other paintings are about drone photography of the planet. Well, they're inspired by drone photography of like landscapes and coastal lines and mines. Like I'm actually really into aerial photos of mines for some reason. Because I feel like the geology of the planet is like a historical diary, right? It tells a story. And so I already had that way of painting and seeing things. And then when I saw the stock to flow chart, I thought, I could use my technique and just make it look like an abstract aerial landscape. But the moon thing, the idea of the moon being the background, that came afterwards. That came like, a little bit after we'd been talking quite a lot about how this would sort of unfold.
Yeah. So give us an overview. What's the current thinking in terms of what it will look like when it's complete?
Mm-hmm. So the chart, I'm loosely interpreting it, but there's the graph, and then the little data, the Bitcoin data points that are like climbing up, and I sort of say that they're spiraling around that trajectory that's heading, towards the higher market cap and all that. And then there's the other trajectory of gold, silver, and diamonds, and palladium, and all that, and how their S2F relates to the market cap. And then the background in his chart is it's just like, a gradient of some sort with lots of lines. And that background is going to be the moon landscape. So I've made like craters for the data. So all the data points of like the Bitcoin data points and the gold and the silver, those are the craters on the moon. Yeah. So that's just this interpretation. There can be other interpretations of it, and it doesn't have to be the moon. But I just thought that's a brilliant, wonderful, exciting way to start it off.
And so for listeners, you probably listened to the earlier episodes with Plan B. Mm-hmm. I think in episode 67, the first one, we spoke about how there were two different charts, and the one you're referring to here is like comparing commodities and their own stock to flow ratio versus that of Bitcoin. And obviously, as Bitcoin is going through these halving cycles every 4 years, mm-hmm. then you can plot out theoretically what it would be. And so that's what you're getting at there, Petek. Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about the materials that are going into this. Tell us about that.
I'm actually really excited about that, because that was like one of those ridiculous ideas where you're just like, yeah, well, that's just like, that's not going to happen. I was like, well, if I am painting the background as the moon, first I thought, oh man, I would love to put some meteorite on there, like actual meteorite. So, by the way, this has none of this has been announced yet on my Twitter feed. But by the time this episode comes out, I'll share it with everyone. I mean, the reaction's been already incredible from people, but yeah, this has not been announced yet. So I wanted to put meteorite on there, and I thought, yeah, I'll contact a geologist, and I'll get some meteorite, and then I thought, oh man, it's the moon. I would love to. It would be so awesome to put some actual moon rock on there, right? Like. And I thought the only way to get moon rock is from NASA, from the Apollo missions, which, by the way, I still want to do. Honestly, I still want to do it. I am going to get my hands onto moon rock from NASA, one way or another. No, but they collected a very a certain amount, and they only dish it out to scientists and universities for studies, and experiments. But then this geologist had lunar meteorite, and I was like, oh my God, like actual pieces from the moon. So some meteorites, I didn't even know this, like some meteorites actually come from the moon and end up landing on planet Earth. And so it's scientifically analyzed for its composition and certified as being real pieces from the moon. I mean, very, very tiny little amounts, like just a few grams, obviously, because it's expensive shit. So, but it's like you've got a piece of the moon on your artwork. So Plan B actually said I wanted to like smash that up as well and sprinkle it over the painting. And then he called me and he said, oh, actually, can you do me a favor? Can you not smash it up? Can you just leave it in one piece so that people, my friends, can touch it, like can touch the moon.
Right.
How amazing is that?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, yeah, I'm with you on that. I thought, yeah, actually, that's a really nice, yeah. So it's a collaboration. It's like a few other people have commissioned me for their own version of it. And each version is going to be very different and suited to each person and their personality and their values around Bitcoin. but it is still a journey that they also take with me, the artist, and I want to hear what their ideas are, and I'll paint it for them, you know.
Is this going to be like a limited run? There'll only be a few, or what's the story with that?
That's an energy thing. So I did sort of think, because the reaction has been so like, wow. And I've sort of gone, oh man, how many of these am I prepared to paint? You know, like, I'm not going to be like the stock to flow girl for the rest of my life. So, but I'd like to paint a family of them, or a collection, or a body of work of them. And as long as they all feel different to me, and as long as I still feel excited to paint them, that's going to happen. And also there's this wider mission, so to speak. You know, everyone who hangs one up in their house, they can invite their friends around, and then it's a talking point. So it touches. It's that bridge. It's that bridge again that PlanB talks about a lot, being the bridge to Bitcoin, and the art can also be the bridge to Bitcoin. Like, art meets science, art meets data, and yeah. So I don't know how many I'm actually, I'm thinking like, okay, at some point I might have to close that list and just
got to give it some scarcity.
Well, that as well. No, I mean, each one is absolutely unique, so I'm not worried about that. It's just I need to enjoy painting them. That's very, very important. But I feel like, and this might sound funny to some people, but actually quite a lot of the Bitcoin community gets this, I've noticed, because I've spoken to quite a few now. What's interesting, well, to me, I when I paint, I channel. I speak to. I know this sounds funny, but literally, I connect. I feel like I connect consciously with the energy of Bitcoin, and I go, "Hey, Bitcoin, tell me, what do you want me to paint? What's this going to look like? How do you want to, you know?" And I ask the canvas. I ask the energy of the person who's commissioning it. So I'm channeling. I'm just channeling what's coming through and what wants to become reality. The same way Bitcoin wants to become reality. I mean, I can absolutely, and we can all feel that. Everyone who's excited about Bitcoin can see how it just wants to, and is becoming more and more a reality. It's like this big black hole that's just sucking the energy out of fiat money.
Right. And it's like it's like you talk about this idea of personal meaning, right? So different ideas have a certain meaning to you, or when you hear a certain song, it reminds you of a certain time and a place that you might have heard that song, or when you were studying for exams or whatever.
Yes.
So how does that play in for you in terms of things like when you first heard about Bitcoin, or when you had your aha moment about Bitcoin? Does that also have a similar kind of feeling there to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, for example, that moment in the cafe for me was just like, oh my God, what's going on here, right? And the same way, so everyone's like bought their Bitcoin for the first time at a different date and time and place, someone might be like, oh, I remember when it hit all-time high, and someone who's really into this will have a lot of emotions attached to that, and it will be a very personal memory to them, the same way we know where we all were when 9/11 happened. Even if that was a very, very tragic event, it was important to humanity in such a way that we all know where we were when that happened, and happy moments as well. So, but with Bitcoin, like if you look at the BTC to USD chart or whatever your currency is, if you're a geek about it, you know exactly where on that chart you bought Bitcoin for the first time. So I'm also very interested in painting that for people, and so it would be like a secret diary to them. Like if they look at the art on the wall, it might be the 4-hour chart, it might be the logarithmic, the whole 11-year log chart. But I could then pinpoint that moment secretively on that painting, maybe with some moon rock or something. But for someone else who sees that painting, it'll be like, oh, that's just a pretty piece of abstract art, or what the fuck is that? But to the person, it's really personal. It's a really personal moment in time. So I like that sort of double entendre that, yeah, you know what I mean.
It means a lot to you, but not necessarily to other people. I guess in the future, because what happens is over time, once enough time has passed, it just what used to be big movements just looks like tiny blips because it's just it's gone away so much.
Yeah.
But to you, it might feel a lot more real.
Oh God, yeah. Or I mean, when you zoom in onto that log chart, I mean, the choppiness is all. It's all a matter of scale, and also I also say that or believe that I think it's the purest form of. Well, it reflects human nature much more purely than, let's say, the stock market, which is manipulated or like by corporations and governments and people in power. So I think Bitcoin is a much purer reflection of human emotions in that sense, like a seismic graph of emotions.
And so have you had much experience then with people who got interested from an art perspective, or they just saw the artwork and then they went on to learn more about Bitcoin?
You mean now with the stock deflation?
Or just any of your friends. Have you had any experiences like that over the years?
Oh, with my friends. Yeah, with my friends, I have onboarded a couple of people, and actually a few women, actually 3 women, actually. So that's really cool. It's not a lot, but it's something. So my sister and 2 other friends, and I did like a little Bitcoin for beginners like morning session because I mentioned to one friend, I said, she was always so kind and gifting to me with her wisdom, and then I thought, well, what can I give you in return? And I said, would you like me to teach you a little bit about Bitcoin? Because I knew she was curious. And then she went, yes. And I said, okay, well, let's do it on Saturday. And then before I knew it, like, she had invited someone, and she said, oh, do you mind if that person brings someone? And then that person said, do you mind if I bring someone? And then that person said, do you mind if I bring someone? And it was just like, okay. And it was a really interesting conversation. And these were all people who really didn't know much about it, but were naturally curious. So when I bring it up, I mean, that's just one instance, but when I bring it up amongst my friends who aren't, there is definitely a natural curiosity there, definitely. And then I point them in the directions of, like the Little Bitcoin book, or, the Bitcoin Standard, and your podcast, and especially also What Bitcoin Did, because that's a bit more easy to get into. And then you can always jump over to like your content for more deeper insights, things like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And what's your take? You mentioned earlier that there's not a lot of women into Bitcoin. What's your take on why that is?
I think that's a real pity. I really do. And I kind of feel sorry for the guys in the Bitcoin space, because I'm like, Imagine going to like one of those parties and it's just like 95% guys. It's like, come on, girls. That's where they're all hanging out. Come on. Let's come to the party. No, really. And I think it's because of that whole tech side that it might seem so intimidating and geeky and, that's just for computer programmers and all that nonsense. But I think they're missing out. They haven't quite cottoned on to the fact that this is culturally going to have like amazing implications. So, for example, Trace Mayer is really good at talking about that stuff. It's like he's like, okay, so who are you going to be? What kind of person are you going to be? Because it teaches you about, you start learning about trust, and with when it's about holding your private keys, it's like, well, how much do you trust yourself? Right? How much do I really trust myself? How reliable am I towards myself? What level of integrity do I have? Like, what's my integrity? All those things: confidence, reliability, independence, health, mental health. So Trace Mayer talks about that quite a lot, mental health. But all those things, if women get that, it has, women are usually the ones who teach their children and the next generation. So usually the ones who pass on culture, or should be a big part of that at least. And I think that's where women can come in, definitely. And also with that little creative edge, and just looking at it from a different angle, from a feminine creative angle. I mean, I'm not saying that other people aren't, that like men aren't creative. It's just women are known to be very creative. They look at those things naturally in that way. Yeah, but we're all humans at the end of the day. So why shouldn't we include more women or get them excited about it?
And you also had another theme that I've picked up on, which is around this idea. It's almost like multiple discovery, right? It's like multiple people can sort of come up with the same invention or some similar idea at a similar time. What's your take on why that occurs and how that's happening?
Yes, it's a known phenomena. I think it's fascinating, where very meaningful inventions across history have been invented around the same time. And, we're talking, if you look at the bigger picture of history, thousands and thousands of years, these meaningful things have like been invented around the same year, sometimes the same month even. And we're talking like in all sorts of, industries or parts of life, like health or science, or like, so Darwinism, the evolution, what does he call it again? Sorry, gone blank. That thing that Darwin invented.
Survival of the fittest.
Well, yeah, but it's got another name to it. But there was someone else who, I think his name was Wallace, who came up with that same concept really around the same time. And they even knew of each other. Darwin had already developed his theory but not published it. And then Darwin saw that the other guy was onto the same thing, and he was like, oh shit, I better like publish mine before he does, right? And it's the same with photography. Henry Fox Talbot and Louis Daguerre, very, very similar timing of inventing how photography is fit to paper. Electricity, all sorts. So I believe, personally, I believe that happens because those ideas are already there. They're already there on another dimension, what you can say the universe, or you could call it source consciousness. Some people might call it God. That it's already there and it's ripe for the picking, like a low-hanging fruit. It's ready in time and space for us to receive it. And if you're the one who's most open to it, to tapping into and tuning into that level of consciousness, you can download it. And that's also why I believe that Satoshi downloaded that information. He was so open to receiving that information that I believe he or the group or she just literally downloaded it for humanity to receive it.
Right.
Yeah.
And now I think one idea that's related to that is Matt Ridley. He's got a book, I think it was in 2015 or 16.
Okay.
I think it's
Let's
called
write that down.
The Evolution of Ideas. I think you would really like that book, because in that book,
Thank
he's
you.
talking about a very similar idea. And what he's talking about there is that oftentimes in human history, there were a lot of people working on the same idea because that was kind of the next step.
Yeah.
And so, right, and it's almost going against this idea of the great man theory that, there was this great man and he invented this idea, and without him, we wouldn't have this idea. Because in reality, as you're saying, there were often times in history where multiple people were working on a similar idea. And it's not to say that,
totally,
it wasn't hard, right? But there was a race, but it was more like, it was a race to be the first so that you got the credit for it, as opposed to if you didn't invent it, it would never, like if DARPA and whatever didn't do the internet, someone else might have,
someone
right?
else will. Exactly.
Yeah.
And someone else would have invented it pretty much around that same time, pretty much. So it's like inevitable. Yeah.
Right. And so if you sort of understand and look back at the history of like, okay, the cypherpunks and what were some of the ideas that came before, right? B money, BitGold, Hashcash.
Yeah.
All of these ideas were preceding Bitcoin.
Yes. So they were already tapping into that information, that consciousness, and they were already connecting and tapping into it. But they didn't sort of manage to download the purest form of it, or it was still evolving. So yeah, I'm totally with you on that. But that's really interesting. That sounds like a great book. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're on a bit of a streak with Matt Ridley once, because on the American Hodl one, we were talking about his other one, The Rational Optimist. But yeah, so look, I mean, that's kind of this theory of Bitcoin was downloaded, right? So I guess from your perspective, how has it been difficult, or has it been quite easy for you to kind of learn more about the economics of it and the technology of it? Has that been a difficult part for you, or has it just been like a natural thing to learn?
It's been up until a sort of level of knowledge or depth of knowledge. It's actually been quite easy for me because I mean, if you're curious, you're just gonna absorb it, right? You're just gonna enjoy learning it. So I mean, I've gone down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, which leads you down the Austrian economics one, the what is money rabbit hole, all those different things. But my sort of wall right now is getting onto running my own node. So I'm like, I'd love to run my own node. I'd really love to do that, but there's just so much I need to learn, or I feel like I need to learn before I can get there. But at the same time, I feel, like I've got a hard wallet, and I'm cool with that, right? But even just getting to that stage was like, okay, I'm gonna do this now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna own my private keys. Like, I'm not gonna do this centralized shit.
Right. Yeah. And look, as I say, it's a progression thing, right? So I don't think anybody's expecting you to be perfect from day one. So it's just now you've got a hardware wallet. Now that's the next level.
Yes. But I think it would be nice if people don't sort of give up there, because the ethos of Bitcoin, it really having your own node is so part of that ethos. I mean, otherwise, why are you? Why?
Yeah.
If you don't want to get there, then I feel like you're not quite getting what Bitcoin really is about, or what impact it can have on the world.
So look, let's talk a bit more about Bitcoin and art just generally, and not like the stock to flow aspect of it. Do you have any other ideas around ways art can be used to communicate the value of Bitcoin, or is it just more, in your view, it's more just like it's an expression of what you're passionate about, and other people, they see that artwork or they hear it or they experience it and they just want it for themselves?
I'm getting a lot of excitement from people. I mean, there's other Bitcoin artists out there, and they're all doing like all these amazing things, and in so many different ways. I mean, a lot of them are actually quite figurative about it. Like portraits of Hal Finney, but done in a really clever way and very detailed. And I like, everyone's got different skill sets, so all those different aesthetics will appeal to different types of people, and I think that's awesome. I think the more varied that space can become, and it's still quite a narrow space, the sort of Bitcoin or crypto art space, and I think it's not just, it's not just Bitcoin, but I think that's where you sort of end up gravitating towards in the end, I think. But maybe for other people it isn't like that, and that's totally fine. But that whole, all that blockchain and all that technology and the ideas and the ethos, that inspires so many artists with so many different skill sets, and I absolutely love that. So, but the people who have contacted me just off the back of these couple of videos that I've put out, and I mean, for me, that's like quite new. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on here? I thought I'm the only geek here doing this but everyone gets it. They just get it, and they get so excited about it. And I must say, like, each and every one of them who's like been contacting me, or even just like sending these little messages on Twitter going, oh my God, I love that. They are so important to me. I can't even tell you. I'm so grateful to every single one of them. And I've had amazing conversations with people. I've had amazing conversations, like really inspiring. And each person is so different, and they see that they sort of home in on a different value around Bitcoin. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, for sure.
To one person, it's all about the freedom and the liberty that it presents, and to someone else it's, fuck the banks or whatever, right? Yeah.
So how do you convey things like, monetary sovereignty in art?
That's a very good question, and that is so abstract. And for me, I do that energetically. Like what I was saying earlier on, I tap into that person's values, and then I sort of, colors have different vibrations. They have different, the way and textures. They convey different feelings and emotions. Even if you're painting an abstract piece of art, you can capture different values and emotions in it. Mark Rothko, for example, was brilliant at that. These giant paintings that they were just colors, but man, they vibrated. If you it's different if you've actually sat in front of a real Rothko than if you look at it in a magazine. It's like it just speaks. It gives you an emotion. So when I'm painting, and when I tap into that person's values, and I then express it in color and texture, and by infusing the energy onto the canvas. Well, that's how I would do that. But yeah, it's a very abstract process, and maybe not everyone, gets it, or.
Right. Yeah. Look, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but certainly it's like sometimes there are things that you don't, they sort of work for a reason that you don't understand, or you see it and you just sense something and you just feel a certain way about that art.
Yes.
So what's your thoughts on running a business? Do you see it like that is it's going to become like a bigger part of your business over this next year or two, or the next few years, that you might actually start doing more Bitcoin artwork as opposed to your other artwork?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I don't see it as a business. I see it as I'm just following the energy of it, and it excites me, and it excites the people I'm creating it for. So I'm just following and stepping into that energy. And if at any point it doesn't excite me anymore, I'll find something else that does. But I do really feel that, and it won't always, like I said earlier on, it won't always be the stock to flow chart itself. But I love the idea of painting data, right? And there's so many different ways of interpreting the data around Bitcoin. There's gosh, I mean, we could talk forever about that. But I do know it's sucking me into that direction. And it's like Bitcoin is my muse, right? So that's how I see it.
Yeah, I like that way of framing it. And another thing you mentioned around expressing data into art, but then you've also got to, we also remember that data might change, or certain relationships might change. Yes. So how do you think about it in a way that, like, are you trying to make it more in a timeless way?
Yes, that's true. Yes, I know what you mean. So, I mean, for example, we don't know if the stock to flow model will hold, right? We don't know that for sure. But nevertheless, I still feel it's an important piece of financial history. And it's not like, oh, come May, it's going to be determined whether it's true or false. That's going to still take time. It's going to still take like at least a year or a year and a half. But it's almost like, what do we already know? Everyone who's in this space, like your instinct for why you're so drawn to Bitcoin, what do you already know? So this one piece of data is just one part of it, and it might lead to new knowledge and other data around it, and then that also becomes significant, and it's all part of the journey. So each and every piece of those data, they all come together in this beautiful sort of puzzle about facilitating the understanding of people to understand what Bitcoin is or get excited about it. And
look, PlanB himself has said all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? And he's even said himself that he thinks, look, the model will break down at some point in, like, at the best case, it'll probably break down in the late 2020s, right? Even assuming the best possible case. So I think that's worthwhile talking about. And it's more just a question of, when does the model break down?
I think once corporates and governments really start stepping in, then it's not going to be such a pure reflection of human nature or the energy of money itself, right? So I also believe that that chart, well, the logarithmic chart of Bitcoin is an expression of the energy of money in its purest mathematical, non-physical form, right? And once human control and manipulation and corruption steps in, it's going to behave differently. But at least we know right now, without all of those things, or with very little of that, at least we know this is actually the purest form of money we've managed to express in form of a code. It's like Satoshi has freed money from its physicality and given it a code, and there's like maths behind that, and maths is part of nature, So it's not always going to behave like that once it gets too big, but the nature of it is inherently there already, and it will always be there. Do you see what I mean?
Right. And look, I think it'll, even if it does break down at some point, it doesn't necessarily mean the values of Bitcoin are being compromised. I think it's just
No.
it's just reached a certain level of success or failure potentially that Bitcoin has reached, that it has just gotten to that level. So
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about the timeline then for your artwork on this particular stock to flow artwork. What's the time frame that you're looking at in terms of releasing it and so on?
Yeah. So this one's taking a long time because it's the first one, and it's very, very layered. So I have to be very strategic about when do I paint what layer, and because I haven't done those layers yet, sometimes I'm a bit nervous to do the next one. I'm like, oh shit, like now the moon rock's going on, I'm like, oh no, well, I'm going to ruin the whole thing. No. So I wait for that moment where it feels good and where I feel like, okay, I know what I'm going to do next. And then there's all these videos, and I'll tell you what, video editing is honestly, it's just a bitch. I've had to teach myself, and it takes so much time. So all these things they're making this particular one very stretched out. Then there was Christmas in between. But I think I'm close to finishing it. So I feel like it's quite close. I'd give it like another 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, great.
And then there's going to be limited edition prints of that one. And I think, well, people are very excited about that because they'll all have the print. They can have that in their house or wherever. And
they're paying in Bitcoin as well.
Some of them are. Oh yeah, which is also awesome. Like that's whole, that's on theme, And then So then there's other commissions. So there's already a lineup of commissions of original paintings and different interpretations and variations of the stock to flow chart. And it doesn't have to be exactly that stock to flow chart. It could be the very, very first one that he ever did, because I love the graphics of that and the simplicity of it. So that's also the first one he put out is also a piece of financial history. So he's developed them over the course of time and he's refined it. So I'd love to paint that very first one for someone as well. And so those will also then have limited edition prints, just so that, to share that excitement, and so people, don't have to commission an original if they want to be inspired by it. The next originals I'll be much faster at painting them, just because by then I'll be familiar with the layers and the process, and I probably won't be doing so many videos about it because that does take me out of the studio a bit.
Yeah,
but I love the journey. The journey's it's just so exciting. I love it, and all the input from people I'm so grateful and inspired, and it's really touching and amazing how people have been reacting.
Yeah, and
also the synchronicity, that's also really interesting. Like the people, I can't, I'm not going to disclose anything that reveals their identity, but the amount of coincidences or synchronicities that are sort of falling into place with each person, there's quite a few. I'm just like, wow, this is incredible, but that's because we all speak the same language in one way or another. The fact that we're all excited about and get what Bitcoin, what it is, what it means to humanity and, financial history. The fact that we all get that means we already, I don't know, we talk about it being a community.
Right.
It is a community. We all get each other. So we are already on that same wavelength. is what I mean.
Great. So look, let's hear a bit about your website and where the listeners can follow you, and if they want to find out more, or if they would like to order some, where can they find you?
Okay. I haven't got a website up yet for the orders. I'm just taking that directly, like in the direct messagings of Twitter. So I'm on Twitter at it's Petek, Petek, and then the handle is at Radar Rain, RADARRAYNE. So you can find me there, and you can watch the videos there. And where else? There's a Cape Town gallery which has some of my work up. They're called Axis Art Gallery. .co.za. So those are good places. So that's a good place. Well, Twitter is
the main place to get you. Yeah, great.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well that's great. Look, thanks very much for joining me, Petek. It's not been my typical episode, but I've enjoyed chatting with you.
No, I bet. Oh, thank you so much. It's been really nice chatting with you, and you've asked some very interesting questions as well. So. Also, see where that takes me as well. Thank you.
All right, that's it for the episode this week. Make sure you check out the show notes and the transcript at stefanlevera.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the Citadels.